Well, hello again. This is the 17th of February 2021. And I have news. I have been sent my checklist thingies, my worksheets from the autism assessment people. So I may be on the road to being officially one of me. Anyway, I've been looking through these questions. There's some very strange questions on here. I'm going to run through it and tell you what I think about it. Because there were some that I found quite difficult, and I have had a few issues with some of them. Well, this first question, the Cambridge Behaviour Scale. This is copyright 1999. I'd like to think that understanding of autism has gone on considerably in the last 22 years. It does seem to focus very strongly on the kind of social awkwardness trait, which is one of those things that people do learn to mask, probably more than anything else. And there is it's one of those things you do eventually learn the rules, what to watch out for. So it is one of those things that isn't always a reliable indicator of autism, and also some people are just not very sociable. Some people are just introverted and aren't necessarily autistic at all. So anyway, I'm going to go through some of these questions on the one dated 1999. I can easily tell if someone wants to enter a conversation. What does that mean? What kind of conversation? Who? There's quite a lot of questions like this. Like, I'm good at predicting how someone will feel. What does that even mean? When? In a conversation, I tend to focus on my own thoughts rather than what the listener might be thinking. Well, that's not really a conversation, is it? That's just speaking. I find it hard to know what to do in a social situation. What kind of social situation are we talking about? Are we talking about, having a natter with my friend? Are we talking about introducing myself to a new colleague? I don't know what that means. I find it hard to know what to do in a social situation. I'm quick to spot when someone in a group is feeling awkward or uncomfortable. What group is this? How many people are there? How are they expressing their awkwardness or discomfort? Are we talking about, watching a group of people on telly? Are we talking about a group that we are actively involved in? I don't know. These answers are different in different situations. It's I can't always see why someone should have felt offended by a remark. I mean, who's making the remark? Who is offended? How are they offended? What was the remark? It's just too vague. I don't understand. I mean, I did answer all of them. I mean, a lot of the ones that I didn't really get, or it depends on too many variables. I put slightly agree or slightly disagree instead of strongly agree or disagree. Here's one that I put strongly agree. I enjoyed having discussions about politics. But is that an autistic thing? I mean, if you are an autistic person with a special interest in politics, then yes, obviously it is, but no, not everyone is. Some people would rather talk about anything but. I just think that's not vague enough. I think that is just way too specific. I say it was a bit of a struggle, and it was quite confusing, I gotta say, this whole thing. People sometimes tell me I have gone too far with teasing. Do people tell each other that? I don't know. Is that a sort of common thing that either autistic or holistic people are told? I don't know. I mean, that was not something that I have ever been told. I would strongly disagree, but I'm not a teaser by nature. Maybe that's what the question is. Maybe that's what the question is. Do you enjoy teasing people? No. No, I don't. I can sense if I am intruding, even if the other person doesn't tell me. No, I can't say that's something I've ever sensed. How could you sense that? Does sense mean, oh, I can tell, but I'm not sure exactly how I can tell? Does it mean that you get some sort of intuition? I don't know. I don't get that question. Yeah, that was different. And as I said, it does go over. It does go very hard on the sort of introversion and social awkwardness traits. There's very little about the real kind of magic of autism. I mean, clearly it's done by a neurotypical person talking about their observations when talking to autistic people, but there's very little about the actual autistic experience that you read about so much when you sort of join autistic support groups, such as stimming, spins, memory, the long-term versus short-term memory, sensory experiences, often very heightened, sometimes to the point that it makes you behave in what seems to others an irrational way. Things like misophonia, there's when you get a very negative physical sensation, kind of pain or sickness from a sound. I remember quite recently my son saw some graffiti on a bin, a bin that was sort of covered in a matte powder coating, and he just went up and touched it. Someone scratched the name in the bin, and he just went up and touched it. And just the sound of his fingernails scraping on this powder coating, it made it feel like someone was trying to pull out my front teeth. Now, it was painful. I don't say many things are painful since I gave birth, right? This was painful. And it was purely a sound. Yeah. Some people say that it makes them feel sick to hear certain sounds. I find at work, when the conveyors are on the till, sometimes my colleagues don't switch them off when they leave, and the conveyor still keeps going and going. And I can feel this pressure building up in my ears. And when it's just in short bursts on my own till, or on the till behind, that's fine. I can cope with that, no trouble at all. But when it's just going on and on and on, the droning noise of it just feels like there's a spring tightening and tightening and tightening in my eardrums until it builds and until it's actually painful. And then I just have to get up and stop the till. Just have to say, oh, sorry, excuse me, just two seconds to a customer, and then go and switch the till off, because I can't deal with it. You know, it hurts my ears. And it's something that I just cannot explain to my colleagues, because I've tried to explain it to some of them, and they just think it's funny to leave all the tills going, so that I get a bit stressed about it. You know, it's something that you can't explain to holistic people. And the idea of food, there's nothing about food, eating habits. You know, wanting to separate things on your plate or eat things in a certain order. Or sort of eat things that are certain colours, or not eating, food aversions, you know, these are sort of all extremely common things that autistic people speak about between themselves, but there's absolutely nothing about it in this questionnaire. So they sent me another one. The Adult Autism Spectrum Quotient, the AQ. Age 16 plus, evidence of Asperger's syndrome or high functioning autism. Males and females. This is copyright 1998. I actually found this one a little bit better. It does sort of go over you know, a few more subjects. Things like I'm fascinated by numbers. It does go into that sort of pattern recognition aspect of things like I'm fascinated by dates. And it does ask us, it does say as well, I often notice small sounds when others do not. Which, you know, the previous one, which is actually a later date, 99, this is 98. Something that it didn't cover at all. And it's a big autistic thing. I mean, I didn't realise until I started researching autistic traits and speaking to other autistic people, you know, before I self-diagnosed, that it's not a sort of common human experience to be able to hear when the fridge switches on, or to hear bubbles popping in lemonade. They can't hear it. And that just blew my mind, you know, that people are just walking around not being able to hear the fridge. I couldn't believe it. Normal people can't hear fridges. Anyway, if I try to imagine something, I find it very easy to create a picture in my mind. Yeah, this is a thing that, I mean, it's not something that I have personally, it's a trait I do not have. But yeah, a few people have mentioned that it is quite common amongst autistic people to not be able to picture things. You know, when you read a book, you can't imagine what the characters look like. Or if someone's talking about, you know, something that happened to them, you can't really imagine them doing it. You know, have sort of imaginary friends. They can't write fiction because they can't sort of see these things happening. You know, another question is, I don't particularly enjoy reading fiction. Well, of course, if you can't picture things, you're going to struggle reading fiction. But again, it does go over all these questions like, I don't know how to tell if someone listening to me is getting bored. Well, is that a normal thing? I mean, it's supposed to be kind of general good manners to not look bored when someone else is speaking. So how do you know if they are genuinely interested or being polite? How do you know if they are genuinely disinterested or being deliberately rude? Yeah, there's still quite a lot of quite awkward questions here. I find social situations easy. Well, it's that same thing again. What's a social situation in this context? I find it easy to go and visit people I know well. I don't find it easy to be sat in a room with a load of strangers and asked to start a conversation. That happens to me very rarely. I tend to avoid that kind of thing. Yeah, it does focus a little bit more than anything else on sort of introversion and social awkwardness traits, which I think makes it easy for me to understand why extroverted autistics and people who mask very well do find it very difficult to get an official diagnosis, and why they're so often disbelieved, even by professionals. And how little idea a lot of professionals have. I know somebody. I was talking to someone online who said that in 2019, she was, an officially diagnosed autistic. She went to a therapist for something else. He said that women are not autistic and removed her diagnosis. In 2019. He didn't believe her, he didn't believe her previous doctor's opinion. And that's someone who is, working in psychology. How could that happen? It did. Again, some of them are still quite nebulous, even though I preferred this test, and some of them are just a bit awkward. What does it mean? I find it easy to do more than one thing at a time. What things? I can watch telly while I'm eating. I can't play with my son while I'm hanging out the washing. What two things are we doing at the same time here? I can natter to the customers as I'm scanning their shopping. I can't also mop the floor because I only have one pair of hands. I don't get that. I find it easy to read between the lines when someone is talking to me. It sounds like a simple question on the surface of it, but when you think, if you can't read between the lines when someone is talking to you, how do you know that you can't do it? I find it difficult to imagine what it would be like to be somebody else. Can most holistic people imagine what it's like to be somebody else? I don't know. Can they? Are they always going round imagining what it's like to be somebody else? I don't really see much evidence of that. I enjoy meeting new people. New people is a very broad church. Some new people are nice, some new people are nasty, some are okay, bit boring, but harmless. Which new people are they? Are they new colleagues? Are they my friends' new partners? Are they sort of distant in-laws? I don't know. I enjoy meeting some new people more than others. I find that question very difficult to answer. I'm a good diplomat. Well, I'm sure everyone would like to think they are. Whether you are or not, I think is something that only somebody who has had to ask for your diplomacy skills in the past would be able to answer. Again, it's not something that I'm called upon to do very often. Yeah, that's that one. And this one, relatives questionnaire. This one doesn't actually have a date on it. And the idea is this, that you give it to your parents or, someone who knew you well when you were a small child, and they can fill it in for you. And I find this one sort of covers a lot more traits. Starts off, read the following carefully, circle the appropriate answer. Answer as you remember the patient's behaviour in their childhood, ages 4 to 10. Now 4 to 10 is a big range in childhood. I mean, a 10-year-old is more than twice as old as a 4-year-old. And I suppose it means sort of primary school age. And there's a few that go back further. It says, was she or he speaking by 2 years old? But again, things like that, it can be misleading, because some of us are hyperlexic, of course. Hyperlexia, it means you tend to speak and read very early. I think that's sort of asking about whether you have non-verbal autism. But of course, some of us are hyperlexic. I think a lot of the questions on here are sort of more specifically about autism as opposed to social awkwardness, which I think is an important distinction. And of course, some people just aren't very sociable. Some people just, for whatever reason, never learn. Some people have other interests or whatever, and are not autistic. And of course, some autistic people are extroverts and do feel lonely. And are hyper-empathic. So hyper-empathic autism is a big thing that was but never really covered by these. There are a couple of questions on here about sort of lack of empathy. Can't see one now, I'm trying to look for one. I find myself drawn strongly to more strongly to people than things. Again, what are people and what are things? Some things are more interesting than some people. I'm sure even holistic people would agree with that. Anyway, yeah. And there are descriptions on here of traits which those two that you fill in yourself were completely forgot all about. Like, did she like to do things over and over again the same way all the time? There's nothing there about sort of ritual behaviour, about sort of autistic aspects that look a little bit like OCD or anxiety. Nothing about anything like that. Did she or he appear to notice unusual details that others miss? Would they join in playing games with other children easily? Could they keep a two-way conversation going? Things like that, things that, the parent would notice, made them different from, well, at least what they expected a child to do. Here's another one. Could she or he read appropriately for their age? What's appropriately? Does it mean, were they behind with their reading? Were they ahead with their reading? No, I didn't read appropriately for my age. I read Lord of the Rings when I was 8. Did they mostly have the same interests as their peers? Did they have an interest which took up so much time they did little else? Yeah, that's... So now here we're getting into the special interest. Now that is a much better description of a special interest, I think, than do you have strong interests? No. Were people important to him / her? Which people? Some people important to me. My mum was important to me, and my nan. I suppose to some extent my school teachers were. What's people? Could they dress themselves? Yeah, I don't know if this is sort of focused more on the sort of learning disability with autism, perhaps. Did they play imaginatively with other children, engage in role play? The assumption I think here is that autistic children don't play imaginatively. I think that is kind of based on a bit of a fallacy, a misunderstanding, that when we are sort of collecting things and putting things in patterns and rows, we aren't actually imagining anything. You see, I used to do those things, but there was a story to it. These objects were, they had some sort of character ascribed to them, and they were being put in order of some sort of relative importance. And there was an imaginative process going on there. I was trying to create something. It might look like I was just tipping the buttons around on the floor and making them into pretty patterns. But to me, it was the map of a town, and things were going on in the town. I wasn't talking about what I was doing or telling anybody the story, but it was imaginative play. Everything I did was imaginative. It was staring at a tree. I was imagining things going on in the tree. Yeah, I might stare at a tree for half an hour, but it was because I was picturing things going on in it. It's actually only very recently that I've realised that I did these things. To me, I was playing, I was imagining things, but as to an observer, I'd just have been stood looking at a tree. Could they count to 50 without leaving any numbers? I'd like to think most 10-year-olds can do that. Did they make normal? What the hell is normal eye contact? I don't know. Did they have unusual and repetitive movements? Here we go. We're talking about stimming. Yes, that's a good question. I think. I think we're starting to actually talk about autism as opposed to your child being a bit quiet. Did they sometimes say you or he stroke she when she meant I? Yeah, echolalia. That's one of the sort of peculiarly autistic things. Did they prefer imaginative activities such as play, acting or storytelling rather than numbers or list of facts? I don't know, do most children prefer play acting to lists of facts? I mean, children like facts, don't they? They like learning facts. I don't know. Could they ride a bike? Do we struggle with riding bikes? Yeah, I suppose it's part of the lack of coordination, maybe. I don't know, are we so uncoordinated that we have trouble riding bikes? Not altogether sure about that one. Do they care about how they're perceived by the rest of the group? Yes! Now we're talking. Yes, I think that is that is a sort of proper clincher, really. I mean, plenty of people are sort of socially excluded or a bit awkward and a bit quiet and a bit nerdy, whatever. But I think whether or not they care is quite more a strong indicator of autism than just being a bit of an outcast. Do they have a lot of unusual phrases? Again, it's one of those things that I think most children do to some extent. They like to have little catchphrases and repeat themselves and say things that they saw on telly that the parents don't necessarily know where it came from. Did you have any concerns about their development? Yeah, maybe that's a thing. Is that an autistic parent thing? Noticing that there's just something a little bit off about your child, but you're not sure what it is. Other comments. Sort of free space thing. Yeah, so that's what you have to deal with when you get your when you're on the path to your diagnosis. Well, what I have to deal with anyway. I don't know if it's the same for everybody. I haven't actually seen anybody yet. I got a letter about a year ago saying I was on the list and it'd be about 2 years. I mean, this is all after talking to my GP towards the end of 2018. No, 2019. I don't know how much it's sort of been delayed or the process has been altered because of lockdown. But yeah, that's what I have been sent. That is the process as it is here in Yorkshire, where I live. The NHS process, of course. Apparently private consultations are generally quicker, but are very expensive, as private everything is. So I've just got to wait for my mum to come and fill this in. I don't know what you do if you're you don't have parents on the scene, or grandparents or anyone else. I think it's or if you're, if your parents aren't supportive, what do you do? What if your parents are just being a bit obstructive about it? What if they don't want to do it? What if they don't have time? Yeah, so that's what I have. That's the point of today's vlog. Right, I'll see you next time. Hopefully, I'll hear back from these in the next year, and I'll let you know what the follow up is when it happens. I'll see you later.